This morning, as a fragile ceasefire continues to hold in the Middle East, the elected leaders of Los Angeles are coming together to stand with one voice with Israel in her pursuit of peace. And hopefully, today's ceasefire will hold. Let me be clear. We are not against the Palestinians nor the residents of Gaza, both of whom have suffered needlessly in this conflict. Their suffering is not taken lightly, and it is heartbreaking to all of us. But we do stand today with Israel against the Hamas regime that in its own charter celebrates a day when its followers will, quote, fight the Jews and kill them until the Jews hide behind rocks and trees. And that charter writes that peace is contrary to the belief of the Islamic resistance movement. A Hamas that terrorizes Israelis from the skies and now from beneath the ground. A Hamas whose primary commitment is not, as it should be, to the security, safety, and advancement of the Palestinian people, but to the destruction of the State of Israel. This regime willingly sacrifices its own Palestinian people and rebukes attempts to find peace. This is not an empty statement by this council. This is a statement of values, that here in Los Angeles we are affirming the incontrovertible right of Israelis to live in peace alongside its neighbors. But today, that is not the case. We knew that there were more than 3,000 rockets had been fired by Hamas terrorists from the tiny, densely populated Gaza Strip. Were Canada or Mexico firing rockets daily into Los Angeles, I would expect we would see a response from our armed forces. The rockets keep coming as recent ceasefires have failed to stop them, and we hope that this ceasefire will last. Terror tunnels constructed with the express purpose of harming innocent Israelis continues to be found and continue to be destroyed. Heartbreakingly, the construction of these tunnels, estimated to have cost 40% of Hamas's budget, have been built at the expense of delivering aid and services in one of the most densely populated corners of the world. To stand with Hamas is to stand against the Palestinian people. And as evidenced by Israel's unilateral decision this morning to remove its troops from Gaza, to stand with Israel is to stand on the side of peace. And here in Los Angeles, so it is heard from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, from Gaza Strip to Ramallah, we stand with Israel in the pursuit of a lasting peace. Until Hamas militants lay down their arms and seek peace, as Israelis and Palestinians have for the last 2 decades, there can be no quiet. And quiet is what we seek today. Instead of quiet, today Israelis still hear and fear that they're going to hear sirens. In a moment we will hear the sirens wail, and when it concludes, I'd ask that we take a quick moment of silence in the memory of all innocent lives that were lost in this conflict. We're going to take a moment to remember and honor those whose lives have been lost in this conflict and concentrate our hope for a lasting peace. Play the siren. With that, I want to introduce the other electeds who are here, and we're going to begin with our mayor, who has been a staunch advocate for Israel. And
thank you very much, Bob, and thank you to my fellow elected officials, members of the community that are here. All of us, of course, are sickened to see what we have seen over the last few weeks as parents, as human beings, as caring people. And Israel is by far our strongest ally in a tumultuous region, one that we stand by for its right and indeed its obligation to protect its citizens, to stop the terror tunnels, the raining down of rockets, and the fear that strikes, the randomness in the heart of every single resident of Israel. We must also, of course, pause those separately, full stop, and say that the loss of civilian life is something that's heartbreaking for all of us. To see the lives that have been lost. It's hit home here. We had an Angelino fighting in the IDF who lost his life. We've seen Palestinians, innocent civilians who have lost their lives as well. And for each one of us, we know that this is one of the most painful images to see and one of the most painful moments in the history of the recent Middle East. Our prayer today is that the ceasefire holds, that this ceasefire holds so that we have an opportunity to create a lasting peace, and that we support Israel. And I'm proud that this country has been able to help build an Iron Dome that has saved lives, has been part of humanitarian aid for many, many years now into the Palestinian territories. That we stand for a lasting peace that will allow two peoples to live side by side without this violence. One of the main freedoms that our former President Roosevelt, spoke about was freedom from fear. And I want to underscore how important that is. The fear that one day you'll wake up and hear sirens and not know whether it'll be your last day is an existential fear that I think few maybe can relate to sometimes here, living in a country as secure as the United States is. But I'm proud that we in the United States have stood by our friend in Israel. I'm proud that we have a ceasefire today, and certainly as mayor here of a town that has one of the most diverse populations on the face of the earth, that is one of the great cities of Jews, of Israelis, of Arabs, that we can speak out, speak strong for maintaining that peace and speak out against the terror that the Hamas regime has unleashed. For all of us, that is the prayer that comes from Los Angeles, over the seas, over the continents, to Israel. And may it hold, and may we find a solution that makes sure this never, ever happens again. Thank you.
I have to say the sound of hearing those sirens was really poignant and brought back some very sharp memories for me. Because just 2.5 weeks ago I was in Israel. And the last thing that I expected was that in visiting the country, this is just as the conflict, or the recent conflict, was beginning, the last thing I expected was that I would be hearing these sirens and then actually with lots of others running for cover. And that's exactly what happened, both in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. Not something, again, that I at all anticipated, but when you experience it, you begin to understand just a little bit about what it must be like to live under that threat of terror. And how awful it is also for so many Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, that have been killed and who have suffered because of what is happening there, but suffering because of that which has been done by Hamas. I have to say, when we crowded with lots of others running, when we heard those sirens, we ran and we found ourselves in a crowd of Jews, of Israelis, of Christians, of Muslims, because the missiles that were sent by Hamas, they don't just go after one people. Anybody who is there ends up getting the potential of being hurt. And imagine thousands of missiles. If only one person had been killed by each of these missiles, there would have been thousands of people that were killed in Israel. And thanks to the Iron Dome, that has not happened. My parents both served in the IDF, in the Israeli Defense Force. My father was a Holocaust survivor from Romania, and my mother who was actually born in Israel. And we really kind of understand how important it is to defend the country. And everybody in every single country would do exactly the same thing. But we pray for and we hope for peace. I'll close with this, which is today, interestingly enough, in the Hebrew calendar, it's a fast day, which is known as the 9th day of Av. And it's a day that actually commemorates the destruction of the ancient temples in Jerusalem. And the Talmud teaches that these temples were destroyed because of hatred. And the whole point of the commemoration of the day of Tisha B'Av, which is a fast day, and there are many people who are fasting in Israel, is that we must eliminate hatred in our world. We must find a way to achieve peace. But the only way that that can be done is by working together, by strength, by realizing that we are all brothers and sisters. And hopefully that shall come to pass someday soon.
Thank you, Bob. I stand here today with my colleagues for a simple plea of peace. We're excited that there's a ceasefire, even though it's tenuous at best. And we pray that that ceasefire turn into a real truce, and that turns into a real agreement, and then that turns into an actual legitimate peace. But really hear the sirens, to actually know that there are individuals from infants to seniors that when they hear this noise, that they have to run to safety, and to know that our controller actually experienced that is surreal to me. So basically we just stand here asking for a real and lasting peace.
But my daughter recently got back from Israel, just this last week, in fact, and she was there for the last couple weeks. And my wife and I really debated about her going on this trip. And she'd already been to Israel before. I've taken the family there. And at this time, right now, with everything going on, it was a real concern for us personally to send our 18-year-old daughter there. I called her every day, and she said, "Dad, stop calling every day. I'm fine." She was staying with some of the IDF soldiers. These were women who were 18 and 19 years old, her age, that were suited up, ready for war. Her age, and she couldn't put that in her head. It took her some time to figure out that these were people her age that were going to fight on the front line. She was with one of the soldiers one night, and the soldier got a phone call late in her room, and they were roommates while she was staying there. And her best friend's boyfriend had passed away in Gaza, was killed. And she left the next day to go to the funeral, and then she came back and stayed with my daughter again. The next day after that, they went to the gravesite for Max, who from Woodland Hills here died in the IDF the day after his memorial there in Israel. She said it was one of the most emotional times she's ever experienced her entire life. Putting a face on the victims of Israel, putting those names. She now has lifelong friends that she has there. And she said, "Dad, while all this is going on, and while I was on the phone with her every single day, and she was in Israel, she said, I actually feel part of the people here that I'll always have with me. These people live under this fear and this cloud every single day, whether there's a war breaking out in Gaza or not. They are trained to hear and know how to react to the sirens every single day. They live in that type of fear, but it doesn't keep them down. They walk with their head up. They continue to go out and enjoy the nightlife and cafes and getting out and feeling safe, although they know this is happening all around them every single day. They live under this umbrella of fear, and it's got to stop. These are men and women and children of all ages. These are folks that, family members that we all have there, and friends. And we have a direct connection, and we have a responsibility here in Los Angeles. And I want to thank my colleagues for standing up for Israel.
Point out an opportunity to tour Haifa, the port of Haifa, where during the tour I noticed a bomb shelter where longshoremen at the port of Haifa would turn to in the event of bombs targeting the port of Haifa. And I turned and reflected on our port, Los Angeles, and how it is the lifeline of commerce, not only for Los Angeles, but the port of Haifa, also the lifeline of commerce for Israel. And also realized how blessed we are as a country, that knowing that freedom is not free, but also realized that we need to continue to stand with Israel and our brothers and sisters and family members in Israel.
Well, it's my strong opinion that Israel wants peace, and Israel wants nothing but peace. But at the same time, I think she has a right to defend herself under attack. And it's clear to me Hamas does not want peace. What they've done in the last few years has been fire rockets ceaselessly at Israeli targets. They've been digging tunnels in which to attack Israelis. They kidnapped several young innocent Israelis and murdered them, and have done everything to escalate this conflict. They followed that up by firing hundreds of rockets at Israel, and at some point, even a country with the most restraint like Israel has had to defend herself. And they have sought to cause casualties on both sides by using populations as human shields, as they call it, but I think with the intention not of avoiding conflict, but of causing casualties and then being able to point to them. They put tunnels under mosques, they put tunnels near hospitals, they put rocket launchers near many populated areas with the intention of turning world opinion against Israel because Hamas helped create a situation where there would be killing of innocent bystanders. I know we want to see this come to an end. I know Israel wants peace, and hopefully this ceasefire will work and peace will be achieved for both Palestinians and Israelis, all of whom I think want peace.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield. Thank you for doing this, Mr. Blumenfield, because it's important to stand for peace. We're the city of angels. We want the angels of peace to come over Israel, come over the Gaza Strip. I do want to thank Egypt for stepping up. I'm a local city councilman. I don't know, I know a little, I read the papers, but you see others come together to join hands to bring peace. Is so important. This, as you can think about it, this is like from Santa Barbara to San Diego, and there's a line like down to 605. And if you're on one side of the line, they're throwing bombs at you all the time and trying to destroy your life. You can't do that.
Thank you. On behalf of the government of Israel, the people of Israel, I want to thank the City Council for standing up with Israel, and especially Bob for convening us today. I thank the mayor and mayor's office for joining us in a very important statement, a statement for peace.
I want to close by reading the words of President John F. Kennedy. He wrote, "Israel was not created in order to disappear. Israel will endure and flourish. It is the child of hope and home of the brave. It can neither be broken by adversity nor demoralized by success. It carries the shield of democracy and it honors the sword of freedom." So Los Angeles stands with Israel today. We really